So now what? And of course, as always, we consult with our friend and expert lawyer from legalese.co.za, Eitan Stern. Thanks very much for joining us this morning, man. Today's question is, I have been requested to make child payments. So now what? So we'll be focusing on what your legal rights and recourses are when it comes to paying child maintenance. Very, very important topic, especially in lieu of what we were just talking about now, family planning and such things as those.
Absolutely. So for me, when you think of child maintenance, it always comes with a negative stigma or the drama behind it. But let's take it back a bit. What exactly is child maintenance and when is it applicable?
Okay, so it does have this very negative stigma to it, but what people must remember is that child maintenance exists whenever you have a child, you have a duty of care in the law to that child. So we always think of child maintenance when we're talking about divorce, where one parent has to pay. But child maintenance exists from the moment you have a child, whether you're married or not, and the parents have an obligation to look after that child and maintain that child, and that is giving them food, shelter, education, safety, etc. And so what people must remember is that a duty exists whether there's a divorce or not. All parents have a duty to maintain that child.
And I think we've also got to just bring it to the understanding that, you know, at the end of the day, the child didn't ask to be in this world. They were brought into this world, and that's, I guess also part of the bigger scope of what child maintenance laws intend.
Yes, exactly. So you know, all over the world, we have child maintenance laws, and over, say, the past probably 50, 60 years, even less, there's been a kind of change in the way the law world over and UN laws view maintenance of a child. So the laws kind of, in some way, used to see children as property of parents. Now the laws are much more focused around parents having a duty to look after the child and to raise children up to be, you know, safe and secure and live the best lives that they can live. And world over, we've seen the laws around children change in that regard. So South African laws, the South African Constitution protects the rights of children, creates this duty of care that parents have to maintain children, and we see the same thing the world over. The laws are all there. Child maintenance laws exist so that people know that if you have a child, you have a real responsibility to look after that child.
Absolutely. Now, it always seems as if the mother is asking payment from the father. Does it apply both ways?
Yes, 100%. It's a great question. So we only see it as the father, as applying to the father, because that's the kind of stereotypical way that families are set up, that the mother's the primary caregiver and the father's the primary breadwinner. But that's not the case in all families at all, and it's certainly not the case in the law. Both parents have a duty of care, and the primary caregiver is going to be the one who's putting in the time and effort, you know, in the day-to-day and looking after the child. And if you're not the primary caregiver, then you substitute your duty of care financially. But both parents certainly have it, and if the child lives with the father, then the mother would have the duty to pay.
Yeah. In many, many sad cases, some of I think the most common grievance is that though legally obliged to pay child maintenance, some parents fail to do so.
Yes.
No matter what the circumstances. But like I said, it's a very, very sad situation indeed. Can you avoid paying? So, in any way?
Yeah, well, I mean, so payments is a tough thing. People avoid paying all the time, all sorts of things. In the law, can you avoid paying? No, you're not supposed to. And if you have a duty to pay and you don't, then the other parent can take you to the child maintenance office or to the court, and they can get a court order to force you to pay. And the courts can award a number of different things to try to force you to pay. They can blacklist you from credit. They can even send you to jail. They can make you pay a fine. They can attach your assets, like your car or your home. And the courts will do everything in their power to make sure that someone who has a duty to look after a child does its job.
Yeah. Very, very importantly so. A very important topic. If you have any questions to send to us, please do so. Expresso Morning Show, SABC3, and we'll be back again in a moment figuring out So Now What with lawyer Eitan Stern. Stay tuned.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. This is your Feel Good Breakfast Show, Expresso on SABC3. It's a Wednesday morning, and we're continuing our discussion with lawyer and director at Legalese, Eitan Stern, about what your legal rights are when it comes to paying child maintenance. And as you were saying, you dealt with some of these cases earlier on in your career, and it's a completely very, very sad state of affairs.
It's very sad.
This even needs to be a discussion.
Yes, the lawyers that are out there that deal with family law, they have a very special place in heaven that's reserved for them, because it's very tough work, it's very serious work. work. Someone's got to do it, and the matters are quite sad. Parents out there, I suppose when you have a child, you must just remember there's an obligation to keep it all together.
Yeah.
You said the obligation. Now, if the parent does not pay,
Yes.
what are some of the institutions or the consequences that that parent face?
Okay, so they can, as I said before, they can go to jail, they can be fines, they can be blacklisted from getting credit. So the law views it quite seriously if you don't pay.
Yeah. So let's talk about steps. If you're in a position where you are the parent who's taking care of the child and the other parent is not contributing,
Yes.
though obliged to do so in law terms, you haven't first taken legal steps. What can you do? What is the right kind of process to follow?
So if the process would be to approach the courts, the maintenance office or the courts, and they are the ones that can try take action. If you're in a situation where you have an obligation to pay maintenance and you suddenly can't afford it, you can also go back to the court and apply for your maintenance to be lowered. The courts may or may not agree, and if the person who is looking after the child needs more money, they can also approach the courts and ask the courts to relook at it and try get more money awarded. So it can be something which can be changed over time, but it's the courts that are the kind of guardians of it. Of course, parents can also, without going to courts, they can also just agree and act like adults and agree. So that is possible, although it's rare.
Now, does the obligation ever end? Because I know with some people, they're like, 18, it's done, you're off my hands, but does it ever end?
For sure. So the obligation does end when a child reaches the age of majority or when the child can look after themselves.
Yeah.
So there is a point where the obligation ends. And what's quite interesting is that at some point in life, the obligation also does flip around. So us as children, when our parents when they get to the age that they can't look after themselves, children in some instances have a duty of care to look after their parents, or the closest relatives to the parents will have the same duty to look after their parents.
Yeah.
Which is the great, beautiful circle of life.
Let's talk about the other monetary obligations that parents do have towards their children.
Sure. The other monetary or non-monetary?
Let's discuss both.
Okay. So when it comes to monetary, money is just the vessel in order to maintain a child.
Yeah.
If families don't have money, it doesn't mean they can't look after their child. There's lots of ways to look after a child, which aren't monetary. So parents must do whatever they can to look after the children, and if money's an issue, my suggestion is probably have less kids or don't have kids. But parents need to make sure that they have enough to look after their children. For non-monetary, the duties are quite widespread, and it's quite an involved thing. And parents do have a lot of duties to make sure that their children are housed and sheltered and get education and clothed. And the duties are quite widespread. So, it's really, really important for us to know that once we have a child, I keep reiterating it, it is your responsibility to make sure that child survives and lives a good life. And,
When it comes to disputes of that nature, of deciding that this is the monetary value that is deserving to take care of this child and another parent is disagreeing, who gets to decide whether you want this much, 1,000 Rand versus 100,000 Rand per month in order to take care of a child?
So traditionally, it's a really interesting question. And traditionally, ideally, parents could just decide it themselves. Where they can't decide, traditionally, parents go to a court. And the courts decide. And we live in a culture where there's quite often disputes where both parties get a lawyer and suddenly have to, land up fighting in court, with the children being dragged through it all. And that's kind of become the norm in how these things are resolved. But it's really important to remember there are other options. There's collaborative lawyers out there, there's mediatory lawyers, and there's, all that has to happen is, at the end of the day, it's the parent's decision. Two parents have to make a plan to make it work for this child whether they're in a relationship or they're not. They can choose to go to courts and fight, but there are other, options in order to resolve disputes without fighting that are a lot less traumatic for the children involved. So it's really, if you're a parent out there and you're going through a divorce, I would really recommend looking at mediation or collaborative lawyers in order to figure that out, because it's going to be a lot cheaper than fighting in courts. and it's going to be less traumatic for the child.
Yeah. And for the family unit as a whole, it's not,
100%.
you know, because that has its own effects and consequences. Great advice there, Eitan.
Sure.
Thank you very much. And if
Really a
you're looking
pleasure.
to investigate more and learn more about these topics and the ones that we've discussed before, visit legalese.co.za and also check them out on social media at Lawyers of Legalese.